I picked Clemson to win this game during the offseason.
That's the only reason you're picking it now, then.
And they're going to be rubbing, they're going to be rubbing that rock or whatever the hell the geologists over there do. Saturday, the best day. It's time.
Separation
Saturday. Man, I should have started it with that, David.
I'm so glad
you came up with that.
Separation.
So glad Blaine came up with that
I
term.
came up with that.
It was so good. But we're excited to bring our Saturday special, our college football game day special, and we have a fantastic guest, one of the best in the business. You can catch him on the Family Goals podcast. He was a hell of a player in college and in the NFL, but he's an even better person, and that is our friend, David Pollack. What is up, dog?
What up, my dude? It's good to be back with you guys, man.
Definitely, man. It's been too long, and I know you've been keeping track of it like we've been keeping track of it, and I just want to hop in and go ahead and jump right in this bad boy. You know, looking at this year in college football, you know, typically at this point, we see that one team, maybe those two teams at the top, where we're like, all right, these are the best teams in the country. Everybody else is going to have to be chasing them. Can any team develop enough to get to the point to be able to hunt them down? I'm not seeing that right now. Now, that's not saying we won't see one blossom in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I think it's great for college football. What do you think?
It's awesome for college football. Parody is so much fun. And listen, we've been griping about that for years. Oh, it's the same people every single year. Well, we've also been griping for several years about NIL and transfer portal. And the reason you finally got parity is because of those two things. I mean, you look at the guys that used to be sitting the bench at Alabama developing. You know, those are guys that would step right in. All of a sudden, you're like, who the heck is this linebacker? He's been sitting there for 2 years. How is that possible? Now they're getting paid. Now they're transferring, going elsewhere. Recruiting is different. I talked to a couple of college football coaches. They're like, listen, we're not trying to get all 5 stars. First of all, you got to pay for them, because obviously they ain't cheap, and then you got to keep them happy. So if it's between taking a couple 5-star guys, like we want to get a couple 5-star guys or one guy at the top, but if it's another guy at that position, it's almost like I'd like to get a 3-star that knows who they are, or a low 4-star that's developable, that will stay, that will be in my program. And that ain't something you've ever heard. You know what? I'd like a little less talent on my football team. Like, that ain't something we've ever said in the history of mankind. So there's definitely more parity. And how about this? You know, just in time, 12-team playoff coming down the road next year. You know, maybe we get to the point. How cool would that be if you're like, dude, I see 7 teams that could win this thing.
Sure.
Like, that would be a lot of fun. But one caveat real quick. When Bama and Georgia and Ohio State have that dude at the trigger, they're still the best. They're still going to be the top-tier teams in college football.
Yeah, and obviously all 3 of those teams are replacing their quarterback. I mean, I had a coach tell me that they're having to pay kids, some of these top kids, $5,000 to come on an official visit, just to come on an official visit to put $5,000 in their pocket. And to me, it's fascinating to look around the country. And for the first time, and you know me, I'm from SEC country. The SEC's been the best conference, and at the end of the day, still going to probably have more draft picks in the NFL in the first and second round than any other conference. But I'm looking out west right now at the Pac-12, and I'm looking at a league that it's unrecognizable to me in a good way. And it's not just a bunch of teams out there scoring a ton of points and playing games like the Harlem Globetrotters. You got some teams that'll line up and kick your ass a little bit. I mean, Oregon and Dan Lanning, he's trying to take that next step. We know Utah's physical. You look at Oregon State and what they do out there with Jonathan Smith.
So good.
And it's been an unbelievable stroke of irony. I keep saying it's one of the most ironic things I've seen in sports. In the last year of the Pac-12, who knows what it's going to become? Now it's really the Pac-2. They are without a doubt the deepest and best that they've been. And I think you can make a pretty legitimate argument. They're the best conference in football right now.
Yeah, and I'll take that. I think there's a lot of football left, but I will say the out-of-conference is usually where you go, man, the SEC is really good, but they've been getting their tail kicked in out of conference. So you have to take that into account. But it will be very interesting to me, because how do you develop throughout the season? There's a new clock rule that's very different in college football, by the way. The possessions are different. Like, you watch a team like Tennessee the other night. You're used to Tennessee going up and down the field in a 3-minute drive, a 4-minute drive, and they're done. Well, those touchdown drives now for them are 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes. And you see the clock starting to restrict and the game starting to restrict. And I think that leads who's the better coach, because less possessions equals how do I start the half? How do I start the game? What wrinkles can I put in to become better? But no, the Pac-12, and how about the trigger men in the Pac-12?
Unbelievable.
I think Bo Nix has got a chance to be a first-round pick. I think Michael Penix Jr. can spin the crap. I think Caleb Williams is the number 1 overall pick. Shedeur Sanders is an animal. And I tell you what, I was wrong. Like, I watched his tape when he was in college before they transferred and moved. I was like, this is awful. Like, this isn't very good. And you watch his maturity and calm demeanor. He's been doing an unbelievable job going through his reads, being patient, scrambling when he needs to. So the Pac-12 definitely deserves props.
Yeah, and Coney's been doing it without a great run game and an offensive line that isn't exactly the best in the country either.
Found 3 different ways to win. I know Blaine's going to get into Colorado with you in a second, but first off, Georgia and Michigan, number 1 and number 2 in most polls right now. The scheduling, David, it is weak,
Awful.
right? You and I talked about Michigan's schedule. You came on here and gave me a lot of heck last year about Michigan's schedule, and I agreed with you. And Urban Meyer came out this week, was taking shots at it, even though, like we've played Notre Dame 45 times, something like that, but I'll get into that later. But this season, Georgia's is kind of the same. I mean, my question to you is, and this week will be Jim Harbaugh's first game coming back off the 3-game suspension. How much do we really know about those top 2 teams right now?
I don't think we know a lot. I think what do we want to glean from it? I mean, I think you want to watch the tape and you want to go, okay, who are the ballers? Who are the guys that stick out? What are the deficiencies? Like Georgia's edge play in the beginning of the season was really, really poor. And I was like, who the heck's the guy? And they're playing so many young guys that they're rotating in and out, and they got to figure out the pass rush. And they're doing things for the first time that I haven't seen them do in a while. Like they're putting all of their athletes on the field at one time in passing situations. In the past, they didn't have to do that. They had Devontae White and Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith. Like they were just Jalen Carter. They're like, no, we're cool. We can do that. Like, so now, they're changing and morphing with Michigan. I think it's always for me with Michigan is how explosive can they be? I know they're going to play good defense. And when I start comparing Michigan to elite teams and when they get in the college football playoff, David, and I'm not breaking any news here, like, are they going to be explosive enough? Are they going to be good at the quarterback spot? And I'll be interested to hear what you say. Cade McNamara, I know last week was a struggle bus. The whole team was on a struggle bus. But not McNamara. Goodness gracious.
JJ McCarthy.
I'll say they're on the struggle bus too in Iowa, but they've been they're on the struggle marathon
they
bus.
They live on the struggle bus.
Yeah, they got
a whole different scoring thing.
That's exactly right.
But when you look at McCarthy, obviously, like is he going to be taking that next step? And he looked like he was, right? Up until, last week when he really, really struggled. That to me will define Michigan. So listen, I know they're ultra talented, plenty of pros, really good coaching. And it's about, to me, along the season, how are they going to develop? But obviously they don't lose when they play, Cupcake City.
Yeah, no doubt. On J.J. McCarthy, for me, what I was looking for, could he take the next step up his junior year as he did from freshman to sophomore year? And so far early, I think he has the arm strength is what stood out to me. Like, wow, I've known that you can pull the ball in the RPO and the zone scheme and all that and run and be athletic with your feet. And I know that you're accurate with the football. His arm strength this year is incredible. The 3 interceptions last week at Bowling Green, to me, when I saw him, it looked more like, hey, I can make any throw in the world against these guys, a kind of a Brett Favre gunslinger mentality, and that wasn't the case. I don't think it was a problem that he's going to find when he goes and faces a Georgia or an Alabama, something like that. It wasn't his lack of ability to get the ball to guys.
Well, it's like they say, it's not whether you make mistakes or not. It's when you make the mistakes. And if he's going to learn from those mistakes, it's a whole heck of a lot easier playing Bowling Green than.
And we talked about him playing against Scott Loeffler, who played quarterback at Michigan and coached there. And there was just there's a lot of behind the scenes narratives in that game too that were going on.
Without a doubt.
All right, David, Colorado started off the year 3-0. A lot of people didn't think Deion could do it, but a lot of people like to talk when they're up. All right, if they run into Oregon and lose this game and get mopped up.
When they run into Oregon and lose this game.
Okay. When they go against Oregon and lose this game. But if they get mopped in this game, right, if Oregon racks them by 20+, what do you think the reaction is going to be around the nation? What do you think the words are going to be said about Colorado and Deion?
I don't know, but I know one thing. They've done their job. Yeah. I mean, Deion's more than done his job of bringing eyeballs, bringing, television. Like you bringing Game Day, you're bringing Big Noon, like you're bringing people to the university, you're bringing acclaim, you're bringing celebrities like crazy on the sidelines. And I think there's a little bit of a misconception about Deion because Deion is like Mr. Prime and Mr. Glasses and Flash and jewelry and stuff. But like that dude's pretty hard nosed, man. Like you spend some time around Deion, like he's a disciplined dude. And He's tough, and he's going to make them all work, and they're all going to have to earn everything that they get. Be interested to see in the future too. Warren Sapp will, I'm sure, join that squad soon. Be coaching the defensive line, which is crazy. But I don't think it taints what they've done. I don't think you should look down on it. Like, I think they're going to lose to Oregon, but I still think what they've done so far has been incredible, and it's exceeded everybody's expectations. And I don't think he's going anywhere. Like, I think as long as he's at Colorado, he'll continue to build. He'll continue to get transfers. He'll continue to build, bring money into that program, bring fame to that program, and they'll be a pretty good program.
Yeah, I agree. Let's switch it over to the SEC, LSU Tigers. First one, you lost against Florida State. The second half was bad in that game, especially halfway through the third. But you bounced back against Mississippi State, and you looked phenomenal. Do you see the same trajectory for LSU this year like it was last year?
I do. I still think I think you could argue with the way they look of being the best team in the SEC. You got the firepower. Obviously you see the dudes. You've got a lot of opportunity to continue to grow. I think that Jaden Daniels had some moments in the FSU game that you want to forget that weren't great. But I also think he's had enough great moments where I think I trust him. And coming into the season, guys, when I was picking between LSU and Alabama for the West, I watched the LSU-Alabama game again right before the season, all those 25 great best games from the year before that was being played. I'm like, LSU's better. Like, LSU's bringing back more guys. Like, Alabama, we were talking about them, and I'm like, why are everybody putting Alabama in a playoff when Will Anderson's gone, who was one of the best defensive record? Bryce Young carried them, like, literally, like, backpack style, like, jump on my back through games week in and week out. So it's been interesting. So, yeah, I'm still on the LSU bandwagon. I think they'll get it straightened out. I think they're going to be a team to be reckoned with by the end of the season. I'll be interested to see where they're at. But listen, that first half against Florida State, and listen, if, ands, or buts, and I would say Clemson would say the same thing with Duke in the red zone. Like, a couple of those red zone opportunities, they capitalize on them. That's a different game. And so I firmly believe LSU is going to be in the mix at the end.
Yeah, I got to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, and I feel a lot better now after having watched them. Not that Mississippi State's world beaters, but LSU looked like what we thought they would look like, and Jaden Daniels actually threw the ball in the deep third of the field. It's amazing what happens. Malik Neighbors,
Lambeau,
absolutely nuts.
Well, it's funny. Like, Paul, this Alabama just has programmed us as fans. They just reload, right? It doesn't matter who they lose; they always got another guy. But that's not the Alabama anymore. You can think that's the transfer portal.
Well, I mean, yeah, but go ahead, DP, because I've got a theory on this that I don't think enough people are talking about with the Alabama team. Obviously, the quarterback, you've got a new quarterback. It takes a little bit of time, and you're coming off a string and a run of quarterbacks. We see eventually teams hit a wall. Clemson's hit a wall with quarterbacks. We're going to find out with Ohio State with Kyle McCord, and now Alabama with Jalen Monroe. But when I watch Alabama, and I've seen this developing over the last couple of years, they are turning into a low football IQ team. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, what made them so dominant was just not only that they had Marcel Darius and Dante Hightower and all these guys that were physically and athletically better than you. What made them dominant was they were also smarter than you. Because most teams lose games, they don't win them. I'm watching them come up, try and catch punts that you would never seen an Alabama player do that. They're getting double-digit penalties in big games. They can't even snap the ball. Can't even snap the ball against Texas without getting a procedural penalty. That's what the most unrecognized. You're going to get holdings. You're going to get face masks, the physical penalties. It's the low football IQ that just is why I don't recognize Bama.
It's crazy. And the trench play. I mean, the offensive line, you used to always, and listen, the more we did this and the more Alabama adopted spread and Tua and wide receiver, my gosh, we could go down the list of dudes that they've had at the receiver position. The more you do that, the less emphasis you put on this area. Mm-hmm. And the less importance that is at the offensive line spot. And listen, offensive line play across the board ain't good. Like, if you're watching college football, there's not a lot of nasty anymore. Like, there's not a lot of dudes that just want to rip your head off and, are getting personal fouls. Like, it's just, and then again, a 7-on-7 culture growing up. Every linebacker now grows up in a spread system where they're all spread out, like less contact, less, the line of scrimmage is just devalued so much that it's a different world, man. But you're right. You're right on with the penalties, man. I watch it. I'm just like, my gosh, the undisciplined time after time. And how many times can Nick rip off his headgear and keep that,
And it was the same last season. Man, it was the same last season. And when they were so heavily penalized against Tennessee and Texas, you were on here too. We were talking about it. We said, well, at least those are road games. This year, you were more penalized than Texas, and you were in Tuscaloosa. It was still double digit. It was 10 penalties.
But to Pollack's point, Blaine made a great point after the Texas game. Quinn Ewers walked in there with a white jersey on, left with a white jersey on without a stain on.
Yeah,
they didn't touch that man.
Yeah.
They didn't touch that man the whole game because they don't have a monopoly up front anymore.
The more surprising thing, like quarterback, okay, you missed. The most surprising thing I saw from an Alabama team is they didn't get a sack. Alabama didn't get a sack against Texas, who has, guys, the best D lineman I've ever seen.
Well, why don't we start with that game? We're going to pick 5 games, David Pollack. Let's start with Alabama, Ole Miss. Who you got, Jake?
Look, at some point, they're going to have to tailor this offense to what Jalen Milroe's strengths are. You've got to put your job as a coach is to put the players in the best position to win the game. I know they want to go back to bully ball, probably for the reason that Pollack just brought up, because there's been such a de-emphasis on guys getting nasty up front. When you emphasize it, you tend to get results. I think they're going to water down a little bit of the 3-step and the 5-step. I think they're going to get Jalen Milroe on the move more. I'm tired of hearing about how pissed off the players are. Like Courtney Upshaw said, you should already be pissed off. I have a hard time trusting Jackson Dart. I just have a hard in games like this. I have a hard time because he does not see intermediate defenders, and this is a game where Quinn Ewers is not lining up at quarterback. Not that Jackson's a bad player; he's leading the quarterbacks in running game per rush, but I think Alabama kind of pulls it together. They play their best game. I don't know if they cover, and I know Ole Miss has weapons at wide receiver, but they're beat up at running back. That offensive line got punked. Like I said, I was just waiting for Ashton Kutcher to run out there with a bunch of cameras in the middle of the second quarter against Tulane. I like Alabama to figure it out. It's probably going to be uglier than what people think, but I think Bama wins.
Blaine?
Yeah, I got to roll with the Tide on this.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's going. I think Alabama's going to have a little bit of a coming out party, a little bit more physical. I think Nick's going to get in their head a little bit. I think Jalen Milroe's going to be running the ball a lot more. Because if I see another 5-step drop, I'm going to throw up because that's not who he is. All right. So give me Bama. I think they cover. And I don't think Ole Miss looks great. Quinshon Judkins is beat up.
Yeah,
that's their guy now. Quinshon's a dog.
And he's a baller.
If he can't go,
he's so good.
If he can't go, then you rely on Jackson Dart. And sooner or later, I refuse to believe that Alabama won't get to the quarterback.
David Pollack, can Kiffin go into Tuscaloosa and get this win?
I mean, that's another part of the storyline that I freaking love, by the way. Because you see Kiffin coming back to town. You've seen Sark, by the way, versus Bama. Like, they know the buttons to push to get miscommunications for these defenses. They know how to make them switch. They know how to get matchups. So I do think they'll have some success. And Pete Golding, you just got. And by the way, we can put this however you want. Like, we can spin this however you want. He basically said, you ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here. Okay, you know good and well they wanted to make a change at that position, and I think that, to me, Alabama doesn't know who they are of offensive identity yet. I think Milroe gives them a better chance, and they'll figure out. Alabama's defense knows who they are. I think the biggest weakness in this game is Ole Miss's defense. Like, that's going to be the part that I think it'll be. I don't think it'll be a very close game. It'll be ugly, but I do think Alabama at home. I can't imagine them losing at home. Just twice in a season, period.
To two former OCs.
Kiffin.
Hey, can you imagine Kiffin on Twitter or X or whatever it's called if Ole Miss somehow does this game?
Brought this up on the show. Lane Kiffin, 1-19 against.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I am a little surprised that we're going across the board here, Alabama, because it was as bad as I've ever seen it last week. And people want to talk about the quarterback issue. There was a day when Alabama could have beat South Florida 45-0 with any one of those quarterbacks they run out, which speaks to them having bigger issues. But I went back and watched some of the Ole Miss Tulane game, like we were talking about. And I agree with Jake's point. For Steve Sarkisian, and Lane Kiffin's going to have a very similar game plan as Steve Sarkisian. They were both OCs at the same time in Tuscaloosa, but he's not walking in with Quinn Ewers, and Quinn Ewers didn't turn the ball over at all. I don't know if Jackson Dart can go into Tuscaloosa and do the same thing, and Alabama has to figure out a way to tailor this thing around Milroe. So I'll go with the Crimson Tide as well.
Across the board.
But I don't know about the -7. I'm scratching my head.
I'm not betting that game.
I don't know about that.
No chance.
But
nobody's betting that.
Florida State at Clemson. That's -2.5 right now, and the over-under is 55.
Look, Florida State, dominant up front. I know against Boston College, there's a lot that went into that game. Red bandana game. Boston College plays really well in there. Castellanos, I think, is a very underrated player. Made a bunch of plays in that game. He does make mistakes, but when you tend to play that way, it's either really, really good or a disastrous turnover. Jordan Travis, I think he's Jordan Travis 2.0. He's scrambling with his eyes down the field this year as opposed to just taking off and running last year. I think from a health standpoint, that's something that was kind of beat in his head during the offseason, and it looks good for scouts. You've got Keon Coleman, one of the best picks up in the transfer portal, the Giraffe, Johnny Wilson on the other side, and Jaheim Bell in the middle. Clemson, skill players that can't separate. I mean, where are the T. Higgins at? Where are the Nuke Hopkins at? Where are the Justin Rosses at? I love Will Shipley, but that's about all they got. And Cade Klubnik, he's putting the ball in harm's way. But I tell you what, when Dabo's backed in a corner, all right, and people make fun of Dabo running down that hill looking goofy. All right, and I picked Clemson to win this game during the offseason.
You don't want to.
All right, and their backs
That's the only
against
reason
the
you're picking
wall,
it now, then.
and they're gonna be rubbing. They're gonna be rubbing that rock or whatever the hell the geologists over there do.
Do it.
I think. Against Duke, Garrett Riley kept trying to run zone read when he didn't have the numbers. They'd get up in 11 personnel and go 2x2, or get in 10 personnel and go 2x2, and Duke would bring the house, and they didn't have enough to block, and they kept blowing up the mesh point. At some point, that switch has got to flip. Give me Clemson.
Wow, look at that.
Give me Clemson.
There we go, Blaine.
That's right. Clemson with a P.
Give me Florida State. Florida State. Cade still hasn't proved it to me. Jordan Travis looking good. Johnny Wilson's an absolute tree on the outside. And I think Florida State up front on the defensive line is for real. I think they're going to be in Cade's face all day.
David Pollack?
That D-line is really real for FSU. Listen, I can get on board. Jay, I can get on board with some of that with what you're saying. And listen, if we really want to go back and look, like Clemson had what? They had 4 turnovers essentially with the Klubnik slide. 3 were in the red zone. Like they had opportunities to beat Duke. Like they easily could have beaten Duke. It's a 12 o'clock game, by the way. That is really, really good for Florida State. Like that place at night, everybody lathered up in a night game would be even worse. So 12 o'clock's a good time to do it. Clemson's got a D-line, so I can give you some reasons. But, Jake, my argument would be this. Find me a matchup that Clemson wins.
Like study hall hours.
I mean, that to me, like you look across the board, like, listen, I'll give you a case like defensive line. I think Clemson's got a really, really good defensive line. Like they've underperformed a little bit, but I think they got a good D line. But Verse obviously is an animal. I see FSU being better. And I think Shipley's going to have to control this game. Last year he did. He had over 120 yards rushing, but I think Florida State's better. I think Florida State's in for a specialty season. And what I've seen from Florida State this year, when they're their best, I think they're the best team in college football.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I just wonder Jordan Travis's health a little bit. Heard a couple things.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
He's a little bit beat up.
I'm going to take Florida State as well. What a great opportunity for them to piece together a full game. Remember that first half against LSU, they weren't great either. They're down with 6 minutes left to go in the third, and they poured it on late against LSU and really dominated. So great opportunity for them on the road at Clemson. How about Auburn on the road against Texas A&M?
Look.
I'm more excited about this than you guys are.
Auburn's playing house money with house money, I think, in this game a little bit. Year one under Hugh Freeze, all the pressure.
And A&M's playing with oil money.
Oh, they're playing with oil money. Yeah, they got Daniel.
Money.
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis from There Will Be Blood.
My boy.
That's my boy.
I've abandoned my boy.
They're just walking around the bowling alley in the bottom of his basement, freaking out. Look, I think Hugh Freeze is the right guy to get the job at Auburn. I love what they're doing in recruiting. The fan base and the program and the boosters, they're all aligned, which when that happens at Auburn, special things can happen. I just think regardless of A&M not being able to break through yet, they've stacked recruiting class on recruiting class on recruiting class. I don't think they've played well up front on either side of the ball, honestly, with A&M. I do want to give Miami credit, though. I think Miami's for real. I think they play a physical brand of ball. It's like their head coach. I think Auburn puts up a fight. I think Auburn may punch first in this game, but I'm big on Connor Wegman, was big on him in the offseason. I think he ends up as the top 4 quarterback in the SEC before the year's over. I like A&M closer Closer than what a lot of people think.
Hey, give me A&M by 1,000.
1,000 points.
A&M by 1,000,000 points. I don't think this game's going to be close.
You don't believe
I don't think that Auburn's that good of a football team. I really don't believe in Peyton Thorne that much. He hadn't impressed me. Every time they bring Robbie Ashford in, they're not throwing it. It's a run. That's why you got 3 third downs against Cal. I think their defensive line's played okay. But I think Texas A&M, they've seen it already. They played against Miami, and Miami's a hell of a football team.
Yeah, I agree.
But Miami looks really good. I don't think Auburn's that great up front. It's going to take time, guys. So Hugh is the right guy. Yep. But I like Texas A&M, and I like A&M to cover.
Did you watch the A&M defense against Miami?
Did you watch Miami's offense? Have you seen?
Hey, Pollack, though, how shocked were you that if Miami was going to score that amount of points, they were going to do it through the air in straight drop-back game instead of lining up and pounding it right at you like Mario wanted? That's what shocked me.
And even more shocking that A&M just sat in the same defense the whole game and let them do it. Like that was and sucked at tackling. It's interesting to me. We talked about it in the offseason, right? Like when Bobby Petrino came in, was it going to change? And the answer is, heck yeah, it did. Like the answer is Jimbo Fisher now isn't in quarterback meetings at all. Like Bobby Petrino's running it. He's calling plays. Like if you'd have told me that before the season, I'd have felt better about A&M. I didn't like the way it started with, he's going to be here. Who's going to call plays? This, that, and the other. Bobby Petrino's taking care of that. And because of that, I do think this offense is going to be better. I do think A&M will continue to get better offensively. And they got dudes. You're right. Like they got 5 stars. They got talent. Auburn, if Hugh Freeze goes to College Station and beats Jimbo, Lord have mercy. In his first year, I can't imagine how bad it would be to live in College Station. I'll take A&M. Give me the Aggies.
Man, you are going to put it on me to be the only one, son. You've
been liking this all week.
I've been liking it all.
You've been liking it all week.
I'm going to go with Texas A&M because I told you guys I thought if Texas A&M lost to Miami that it would be that typical like unraveling of the Texas A&M season. But Miami is a good football team. I think the Texas A&M went on the road and just lost to a good football team, and I really do like Connor Wegman. I was looking at every opportunity to figure out a way to take Auburn in this game because I agree with David Pollack. If Texas A&M loses this game, man, it's going to be bad in College Station. We've been talking about 5-7 is unacceptable. At what point is Jimbo Fisher on the hot seat? It's going to be bad, man, if Texas A&M loses this game. But I really like this Connor Wegman kid, man. I like the way he takes care of the football. Even against Miami, the 2 picks, David, we were talking about the first interception he ever threw in college, the wide receiver had to fall down. A lot of physicality issues at the end of that Miami game where Texas A&M really didn't even want to go tackle. That's something, if that keeps rearing its head, Texas A&M is going to have a long season. But I don't know if year one if Hugh Freeze can go to college.
That's you got the Cats right now.
Well, here's the thing. If you're going to do it, you need to put pressure on them early because they're going to start pressing. The players will start pressing. The coaches will start pressing. That crowd will start feeling it. And if it goes bad early and Auburn gets up 10-0 or something and A&M goes down, have it to the second quarter, you may start hearing some boos.
Yeah, gotcha.
You may start hearing some boos in that crazy.
I can't wait for this game, man. All right, Oregon State at Washington State. Yes. Jake, you were big on Washington State all off season. I wasn't really bought in until I saw this Cameron Ward kid play.
Look, I love their coach over there too. Like I think Washington State's kind of. And it's funny that they play different. Like they have totally different styles of playing, Washington State and Oregon State. But they're both kind of still under the radar, underrated teams a little bit in the grand schemes of things. And I always love when you have matchups like that of 2 underrated teams that kind of go about things a little bit differently. I love Cam Ward, but here's the problem. Cam Ward's got to stop putting the ball on the ground. He has a bad problem of putting the ball on the ground. They've recovered most of them. They've gotten fortunate this year. But I always say the game is won and lost up front. And what travels on the road, the trenches do in defense. And when I look at Oregon State, Jonathan Smith has built this team like Whittingham has built it at Utah. Like we saw Baylor and Oklahoma State kind of move up in the Big 12. They folded a little bit here lately, but physicality. I think physicality wins at the end of the day. DJ using a perfect system where, hey, you don't like the first read, take off. We'll run play action, get separation, and they fly around, try to knock your head off on defense. Yeah. Give me Oregon State.
I like Oregon State in this game, too. I don't think DJ's been touched the entire year. One of the best offensive lines in the nation. And look, finessing only lasts so long. You can only finesse a team for so long. Sooner or later, you have to step up to the plate, and Oregon State's coming for blood now.
Yeah.
They're not here to mess around, so give me Oregon State to cover.
David, one interesting thing, Oregon State has Utah next week after Washington State. Washington State's on a bye next week. Will that play a part in this at all?
Well, I mean, definitely you get those look aheads for sure. But here's the thing: you mentioned, Blaine, about Oregon State offensive line. Like, there's a team that every year you can say that. Every single year, they are so well coached and they're so tough. They come off combo blocks so great. Like, you can see their technique is so great. They're physical. They got a little nasty to them. So I love Oregon State. I love who they are. But I have watched Cam Ward this year, and he is spinning that pill. And I think he's done an unbelievable job. He's their leading rusher. They don't have a ground game. Washington State at home. By the way, this team means more than that anyways. Like, this game, like the last two remaining in the Pac-2. And here's the thing. Both of them have a chance, like, because listen, they're looking for a future, right? They're looking for a home. Both of them have a chance this year to make some noise. You got to win this game. Whoever wins this game has a chance to keep winning in the Pac-12 and maybe go spoil something and go make some money down the road. Whoever loses, they're going to be like, bye-bye. I mean, this game has a ton on the line, like a lot on the line. And I'm going to go, I think the best player in the game is Cam. So I'm going with Washington State at home.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I love it.
Pullman's a tough place to play.
I'm going to join you on that pick, actually. I'm going to go with Washington State as well. I picked them to win 5 games before the beginning of the season, mostly because you look at that conference. I mean, it's a zero-sum game in football, boys. Someone has to win them and someone has to lose them. I'm still really big on Oregon State. Had them with 9 wins before the season. They're going to beat a lot of people, but I'm going to ride with Washington State this weekend. Best game at home, too. That's another big part of this equation. All right, game of the week. Buckeyes, Notre Dame. I cannot wait for this one. We're going to find out a lot more about college football, especially from this game this week. How are you going?
Look, this is the toughest one to predict, in my opinion, just because I think there's questions about Ohio State at the quarterback position, but you know how talented they are. They got Lambos and Ferraris and Bugattis on the outside. Just get in the car and drive it. But here's where the difference in this game is at 2 places. One, I think Notre Dame in the back end is athletic enough to be able to keep up with what Ohio State's doing if they can keep everything in front. I think Sam Hartman can be patient and throw the check down and methodically take his team down the field. I think Kyle McCord, just like most quarterbacks, especially the ones without a lot of experience, at some point he's going to get greedy. This game is going to be lost. It's not going to be won. It's going to be the mistakes that are going to be made. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think Kyle McCord throws a couple interceptions trying to get Marvin Harrison and Ibuka and these guys involved down the field instead of never going broke by taking a profit and throwing the underneath. I think Notre Dame waits them out. I'm going with the Fighting Irish. Sam Hartman's played college football for 37 years. I know Ohio State's I know they've got a ton of talent, but watch number 8 on defense for Notre Dame. Watch him. I got a feeling he's going to make a lot of big plays in this game on defense, and that offensive line, Joe, control alt delete up front. I'm telling you, I like Notre Dame to wait him out. Steady.
Yeah, I'm going with the Fighting Irish on this too.
Wow, there we go.
Yeah, give me Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's got a better roster, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think up front offensive line. The run game from Ohio State has not been great. Right? Kyle McCord has not been great. What's kind of always been missing from Notre Dame? Up front, you've always been good. I mean, you don't have the super athletes. The reason Brian Kelly left, but you bring in Marcus Freeman and you're starting to see him tick up a little bit. And the difference in this game is going to be Sam Hartman. There's a reason you brought in Sam Hartman, and that is to win big games. Give me Sam. What Jake said, he's been in college. He's basically 60 years. They're cornerbacks, All-American cornerback, who's not bad. Estime is an absolute just tree stump to tackle. Hold on to the ball, and I like Notre Dame by at least a touchdown.
Wow. DP?
I mean, Sam Hartman was in college before Joe Burrow was at Ohio State.
He's before college before you were. You played against him.
It's crazy to think about. Man, I honestly thought I'm thinking about changing my pick now. I thought I'd be the only one that would be on Notre Dame.
No change.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I thought that Ohio State and their talent, you'd see Marvin Harrison, Henderson coming back healthy. You know, listen, I can make a case that McCord played last week, named as a starter. Offensive line's getting better. But, man, I just haven't seen a lot of great from Ohio State. And Marvin Harrison Jr., here's another thing, too. I remember last year in that matchup when you had Notre Dame and Ohio State. Notre Dame more than held their own defensively. Yeah. And they mixed up coverages so beautifully. And they did a great job of keeping that. They kept C.J. Stroud, who was a top 5 pick, off balance. So I feel like they could do the same, and I'm with you. Hartman, 13 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So I said I was going to pick Notre Dame because you asked, and I really want to change now because y'all picked them. But I'm going with the Irish, and I would say at home makes a big difference, but the Irish needs to bring a crowd, bro. Like they get way too quiet for me. Like y'all show up and show out for your daggum team and give you some home field advantage.
They'll show up.
We ride together, we die together. Bad boys for life.
I love it. They'll show up for this one, man. A couple seasons ago, this would have been a good matchup just because of the brand recognition, but I think the Buckeyes would have out-athleted Notre Dame at every position. And hey, maybe that's what we'll see Saturday too, but I think this game will be more affected than any of the others based off the new rule changes we were talking about. Because Notre Dame, we're saying Notre Dame plays a lot of that Michigan and Georgia type football where they want to run the ball first. But now not only do you have a top 10 back in Audric Estime and a top tackle in Joe Alt, but now you also have a top 10 quarterback like you guys were talking about in Sam Hartman. And the Buckeyes have gotten off to slow starts 3 weeks in a row, which is understandable. You're starting a new quarterback. You know, you're trying to feel things out. You didn't even know who the starter was going to be at first. If you get off to a slow start this week, don't be surprised if Notre Dame goes and has an 8-minute drive or a 9-minute drive, and all of a sudden you're looking around like, wait, we got the ball 3 times, 4 times in the first half? That's what I'm looking to see from this. I'm going to take the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Wow, Clemson
no shot.
Wow.
Buckeyes big.
Yeah.
Buckeyes big.
Now I'm getting on DraftKings. I'm putting 150.
Oh, man. Well, DP, we know you're a busy man, my friend. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, dude. It's so much fun to talk to you. You know it's all love, brother, and I know you're doing great things. I love the Family Goals Pod's fantastic, dude. I catch it as much as humanly possible and try and keep following you as much as I can.
Appreciate it, dude. It's great to be with y'all, man.
Definitely.
Thank you,
all right,
man.
DP. Holler at you.
See ya.
See you guys.
See ya.